In tonight's Fox 7 Focus, Election Day now just 3 days away, and there's a lot of important races here in Texas, and voters have already been making their voices heard in pretty large numbers. Joining us to talk about this is Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com. Scott, as always, thanks for being here.
Great to see you, John.
Good to see you as well. So 12 days of early voting, saw a pretty high turnout.
Yep.
What do you think is driving people to the polls in those numbers, and is there anything we can read into that?
There is a lot more enthusiasm, of course, on the Democratic side after the reset at the top of the ticket. In Texas, before the reset, President Biden was running about 10 points behind former President Trump, but now the numbers look about like they did in 2020 when Biden lost to Trump in Texas by 5 points, of course, one nationally.
We've seen a lot of new voters registering, younger voters registering, and just anecdotally, it seems like there are at least some people who haven't voted in a while that are deciding, okay, I'm going to come out and vote. What could those groups signal about the outcome in some of these races?
Well, I think you have enthusiasm among young voters, but that in Texas so far and historically up to now has never really translated to success for Democrats. That's what they've been banking on for a long time. But we do see all these celebrities getting involved, which I think is interesting. A lot of Texas celebrities. You saw last weekend Beyonce headlining this rally with Vice President Harris, and on the Republican side, you've got Joe Rogan and some of these other folks who are very popular with young men on the Republican side. And so for those celebrity endorsements and or influence moments, sort of influencers exerting themselves or asserting themselves, I do think that it means there are some folks who maybe would not have voted before and might vote now based on the fact that they're hearing from somebody that they know about. It doesn't really speak to persuasion, but it can speak to some of the enthusiasm you see out there.
Yeah, so talking about Cruz Allred, obviously the U.S. Senate is a huge race this year. It's looked pretty tight at certain points. How is it looking now? And what are we seeing from the campaigns in these final days?
We're getting the closing arguments, and both campaigns are really trying to project very different messages. You know, on the Cruz side, he's talking a lot about boys and girls sports, which is really just code for talking about transgender people. On the Democratic side, what you're hearing a lot more, two things that I'm hearing. One is attacking Republicans on the issue of abortion and saying that Republicans are stamping out women's rights, women's autonomy over their own bodies. And then this that I saw from the Texas Democratic Party, which is the old Ted Cruz Cancun attack. That's something that can really break through when there's so much noise in these campaigns.
Polls showing Cruz 5 or 7 points ahead of Allred, showing a similar margin in the presidential race here in Texas. Do you think those numbers will hold, at least looking statewide, when we look at the presidential race?
You know, when we get through all of this and all the dust is settled, you have to expect that Texas is still going to be a Republican state. You know, when we look at the early voting right now, we've seen Republicans coming out in larger numbers than we've seen in the past. Republican areas, Republican precincts are keeping pace with Democratic voters in early voting. Big difference there is that former President Trump is telling them to do it. Now the question is he bringing out any new Republican voters in this early voting period, or are they cannibalizing the Republican vote on Election Day? Probably the latter. So I do expect that while they'll be exhausting the total Republican votes out there, there still will be more Republican votes in Texas than Democratic ones if the current numbers hold. But Allred and Harris, of course, are hoping that they can get a boost here at the end, and we'll have to watch closely on election night.
All right, Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com. A lot to talk about. Thanks for helping us make sense of it. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, John. Thank you.